Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, February 25th, 2020, and today we're going to be discussing Michael Bloomberg's all of a sudden rise to popularity amongst African American voters down in the South in the Democratic primary. So many of you know that Michael Bloomberg is now an official top 3 candidate. He's currently polling in 3rd place nationwide, and actually in the most recent poll, 2nd place, overcoming Joe Biden, with of course Bernie Sanders on top. After tonight's debate performance by Joe Biden, we probably could expect him to do a little bit better in South Carolina. A lot of, early results, not necessarily results, analysis of the debate show good news for Joe Biden, but it's probably not going to be enough to give him a landslide victory in South Carolina that he was expecting at one point that could revitalize his campaign completely. But if Bloomberg was out of the scenario for a lot of these states, Joe Biden's numbers would likely be a lot better. But obviously, that's just a what-if scenario. There's no concrete evidence of that other than second choice polling, which doesn't typically indicate how the voters actually swings to, because most of these candidates are probably not going to be dropping out until past Super Tuesday. Looking at the 2016 results compared to the 2020 support that we're seeing for Bernie Sanders' numbers are roughly around the same. I will show you in just a second. Right now, I have the 2016 Maryland Democratic primary. The state of Maryland has a very large, it is my own home state, has a very large, population of African American Democratic voters. They don't necessarily dominate the state in terms of overall support. However, they do have a very big say in who is the Democratic winning candidate here. And I think it actually shows a perfect example of how much the nation has shifted and how much certain states have really moved in favor of, number one, Bernie Sanders and Michael Bloomberg. Both of these polls were taken months apart. One of them, obviously, before the Bernie Sanders momentum change, which I can pretty much attribute that 14% to Bernie Sanders is just gaining more support nationwide. But Biden's numbers almost halved. And then you see over that Michael Bloomberg was not polled in the original poll back in September of 2019, but now he is. You know, if you take those numbers roughly and you add them up to either Bloomberg or Biden, they'd be around the same as the original poll. Now, I'm not going to say that Bernie Sanders has an increase in terms of support, because he 100% has nationwide and state by state. But Bloomberg definitely is taking a blow to Joe Biden's support in very important areas. North Carolina. Let's take this one, for example. Let's go all the way back to 2016. Hillary Clinton didn't win it by the largest margin. It was a 14-point victory, but it was still a state with a very heavy African-American population that really swayed the vote in favor of Hillary Clinton. She dominated in the South. Bernie Sanders won 0 states in the South. And this isn't even the worst blowout for Hillary Clinton. She won in Mississippi with over 80% of the vote. So if you take a look, North Carolina, all of a sudden we see Bernie Sanders leading. And the main reason for that, and this main reason there's a dip here, well, if you look who's been leading the entire time, Biden plus 16, Biden plus 18, Biden plus 17, and then all of a sudden, as you can see, this drop hits, Bloomberg enters into the race. Biden drops, and then he continues to drop and drop until Bloomberg was actually over him at one point, and now it looks like it's a 3-way race between Bernie Sanders, Michael Bloomberg, and Joe Biden. Keep in mind, taking a look at the numbers before Bloomberg entered the race, it looked a whole lot better for Joe Biden. Not just there. Let's take a look at Florida. There's a poll taken where Bloomberg was just entering into the race that only gave him 7% of support in the state of Florida. He has since pushed many ads. I mean, you can literally go on incognito and open YouTube and you will get a Michael Bloomberg ad 100% guaranteed, even though you may not even be discussing or looking at anything related to politics. Bloomberg, from 7 to 32%, taking away from that 42% that Joe Biden has. So there's a lot of reasons this could be happening. Number one, that misleading ad I got today, actually, where it's just Obama talking. That was beautifully orchestrated by the Bloomberg campaign in the terms of an effective ad. But genuinely, I think it's wrong to mislead the general public. That ad very much conveys the message that Obama endorsed Bloomberg, which is in fact not the case. I understand the argument of Obama's popular, let's use him, but there was absolutely nothing said by Michael Bloomberg in these ads, and genuinely, I don't think that's fair campaigning per se. Nothing against anyone if any of you guys support Michael Bloomberg, or maybe it is a little bit against the Michael Bloomberg camp themselves, just because that had seemed very misleading. Genuinely, if I did not pay attention to politics and I looked at that ad, I'd be like, wow, President Obama really likes this guy. That could definitely sway anyone into voting for him if they're on the Democratic side. It's a very convincing ad in terms of an endorsement, except the thing is, Obama didn't endorse him. And I think the fact that Bloomberg just has pretty much an endless supply of money, if you really visualize it, he's sending in these ads left and right. All these people are seeing are Michael Bloomberg, and in actuality, it's working. Now, unfortunately for Michael Bloomberg, I was just reading an article about this. African-American voters want a candidate who can beat Donald Trump. When Michael Bloomberg entered onto that Vegas stage, he really lost it. That, I guess, support for him there, sure, probably still retained for the most part. However, it showed that he couldn't really take a beating. He never really knew which area to deflect in, and to be completely honest, he resembles a lot of the same qualities as Donald Trump at face value. Obviously, they stand for different things, but it definitely means something that there's a relation between the two being drawn by a number of Democrats. Now, Michael Bloomberg actually is not being polled in the state of South Carolina. The reason why I wanted to mention this one is because we have another rich guy who took away part of Biden's support, just to mention it, Tom Steyer, who is polling in third place in South Carolina despite not even placing in any of the other contested races. But pretty much just taking a look at where all of a sudden, that's really weird seeing that green. Okay, that makes me really uneasy. But looking at Georgia, okay, so this Bloomberg poll was taken before he entered into the race with, full support to the level that he has it right now. 3% for Bloomberg, 36% for Biden, 17% for Sanders. Bloomberg jumps up to 14%. Biden holds on to a pretty strong amount here, but Bloomberg definitely took that 4% from Joe Biden and definitely pushed himself up. Warren went from 14 to 4. Bloomberg went from 3 to 14. It's not an exact correlation, but Bloomberg definitely, all of a sudden, got African-American votes out of nowhere. And, it doesn't really make sense based off of Bloomberg's pretty shaky history as a Republican, someone who supported stop and frisk, that whole fiasco, being mayor of New York City. There's a whole lot of things that are red flags for Michael Bloomberg in the African-American community. I mean, it's just baffling that someone who literally was a Republican, ideology-wise and registration-wise, and is now all of a sudden resonating as well as Joe Biden in some of these particular states. I mean, North Carolina, this is where, and Maryland, genuinely, this is where you see the exact effect of Michael Bloomberg entering into the race. It's not just on a nationwide level, because, I mean, it is on a nationwide level, but not just there. It's happening in predominantly African-American areas, and the reason why it impacts the national level, well, a lot of Biden support is from African-American voters. I think the last poll before Bloomberg entered into the race, 50% of African-American voters were behind Joe Biden at a point where there were over 20 Democratic candidates. That was absolutely the best number that he could have had. And Bloomberg is here to take away from all of that. And that's exactly why Bernie Sanders is going to get very close to the nomination, if not win it, because there is going to be a split minority vote. There are candidates such as Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders that will do fine amongst whiter voters. Bloomberg and Biden are not those candidates. They really need the minority vote, which is why it's going to be a face-off between the two as to who actually ends up winning the overall, support from them. In terms of these predominantly African-American states, or they may be predominantly white in terms of Democratic voting, but have a huge say from the African-American base of the Democratic Party, Bloomberg really just resonates them. I mean, he is jumping up in the South. He's not really jumping up anywhere else, to be completely honest. Sure, he's getting some support in certain states, such as California, where he's getting 14.5%, rivaling Joe Biden at one point, beating him. Keep in mind, California is a very diverse state as well. But if you do go ahead and take a look at where most of the support is coming from for Michael Bloomberg, it's coming from minority voters for whatever reason. Bloomberg definitely has a white base, 100% guaranteed, the same way that Joe Biden and definitely Bernie Sanders do. But you cannot ignore the fact that after Bloomberg entered into the race and his numbers started spiking up, all of a sudden, the predominantly, the South, Bible Belt, and other minority states started jumping up for Bloomberg's numbers as well. That definitely is the reason why Bloomberg is doing so well nationwide. The Democratic Party, obviously comprised of many minority voters in the Democratic primary, and of course it's going to make an impact on the nationwide numbers and the statewide numbers. And unfortunately for Joe Biden, that is the same exact base that he was reliant on for such a long time. Sure, you could say that Biden's campaign faltered, but if you look at who entered into this race and actually became a super competitive candidate, you can see a straight correlation between Biden's numbers dropping and Bloomberg's numbers going up. And the fact that if you take them all together, who would overcome Bernie Sanders, I am very comfortable saying that if Bloomberg was not in this race, Biden would still be at least competitive for first place. Now he's over 10 points below Bernie Sanders nationwide. That has never been it the entire campaign season. I mean, at one point, Biden was at 41% nationwide in a field of over 20 candidates. That's insane. I mean, right now, Bernie Sanders' peak is 29%. We could likely see it go up or go down depending on what happens after South Carolina, because once Super Tuesday hits, that's when we're going to start seeing a lot of candidates dropping. But Michael Bloomberg's almost sole reason for jumping up is because of minority voters, predominantly African-American voters. The same voters that supported Joe Biden. It was just a perfect storm for taking down Joe Biden. Bloomberg entering into the race with getting a lot more support amongst minority voters, bringing Biden down, Sanders going up amongst other voters, bringing himself up to first place. Just not the best news for Joe Biden. But after tonight's debate, I genuinely do think that Joe Biden might do a little bit better than we're expecting. I'm not expecting a huge victory in South Carolina. I will be making a video about it soon, so you guys can go ahead and see what my actual prediction is going to be. But I think it'll be very interesting this Saturday. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.